Hello and welcome. I'm still working on settlement geography, and starting tomorrow, I'll be starting with the economic geography. So I'm gonna do two videos for June grade 12 2024, and after that, I'm also going to do the preparatory examination for 2024 paper 2. Then I'll be done with settlement geography. Then starting tomorrow, I'll start uploading the revision for economic geography. Welcome. So for this paper, I'm just gonna focus on settlement geography. I'm just going to focus on settlement geography. So what is important, guys, is when it comes to my lesson, what I try to do is I try to simplify things, just to simplify them as possible, to make it easier for you to understand, not to understanding, to understand, to make it easier for you to understand. Because at this point, we don't expect you to be working with thick volumes of notes. You're supposed to be guided by the question paper so that at least you learn the different exam techniques, how to interpret the question, how to answer the question, and the type of question that you are likely to come across. So that's the importance of the type of lessons that I'm uploading. If you can follow closely, you would find out that even if you can just go through my videos, you'll be able to sit for any exam, because most of the questions you are likely to come across them even in the future exams that you are going to write, be it end of the year or any exam that you're going to write, because these are the same the same type of assessments or tests or questions that they are going to use in all the different exams and the tests that you are going to write. Okay, let's start. So I'm doing a settlement geography. I'm trying to cover as many questions as possible from different question papers so that at least you can spot some of the questions that you might find in your geography paper 2. Refer to the sketch below. Various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the A to D next to the question numbers. Okay, I always emphasize that at this level of grade 12, what is important is to understand the concept. Once you have grasped the concept, they assess the application of the concept, and some of the questions are not that direct, so it means you have to think and apply the concept. So you need a deep understanding of the concept. That's number one. Then the second skill that you need to adopt also is how to apply that certain concept. Okay, so you can see from the diagram that we are given, okay, of course we've got different settlements, we've got A, B, and C. So I want to start by talking about, okay, it cannot be, maybe we can say it's not relevant to the question, but I just want to open your mind so that you can actually familiarize yourself with some of the type of the question that you might come across when it comes to a diagram like this. So what comes to my mind when I'm looking at this diagram, number one, is I'll just think of the settlement patterns. Settlement patterns, I can see here, of course, you can see in terms of patterns, they are close to each other. We can be nucleated, of course, when you talk about the shape, that's something else. It can be T-shaped or something, it can be linear. So what comes to your mind is in terms of the density of the buildings, they're close to each other. Obviously, what comes to your mind is, oh, of course, it's likely to be nucleated in terms of its pattern. When they are far apart from each other, what comes to your mind is it's dispersed, of course. So this different type of settlements, it comes up with different advantages and disadvantages. So you should have a general idea of when you talk about a nucleated pattern, of when you talk about dispersed pattern, what are the advantages and disadvantages. Let me just add one or two about if it's dispersed. When you've got, okay, like the buildings in terms of its density is far away from each other, you can look at things like if it's dispersed, obviously there's privacy, they make their own decisions. What comes to your mind? Maybe the land is not fragmented, therefore saving money on traveling. The disadvantage could be that there's no interaction. It is not safe to be alone. You have to pay all the costs yourself. I mean, that's what should come to your mind. Obviously, what should come to your mind when you're looking at a diagram, which means you should try to synthesize all the concepts, bring them into action, apply them before you even attempt to answer the question. Then also, if it's nucleated, like what you see, they are very close to each other in terms of pattern, not shape. Okay, we are looking at things that there's interaction of the people, there's safety, sharing of ideas, disadvantage, arguments, and so on. So this is just to give you an idea of what how broad your mind should be. So when it comes to the shape of the settlements, of course, what comes to your mind? Is it round? Is it linear? Like A is following a road, it becomes linear. Of course, this one, it's more like a crossroad. You can see, okay, once you have that in mind, now it becomes easier for you to give the correct answer. It's not a matter of just reading the question, then look for the answers that you think that have the most definite answers. No, it's not about that. It's about you applying what you have learned. What you have learned in as far as the topic is concerned, that is settlement. So let's start now. All right. So the first question is the social advantage of settlement B is. The social advantage of settlement B is. So we are looking at settlement B. This is settlement B. What are the social advantage? Okay, we are looking at something that has to do with the society. In terms, is there any protection? Is there more interaction? You understand? You're looking at all those things in terms of advantage. You understand? So the key term here is the social advantage. Okay, settlement B is visible. You can see from the diagram, from the source, from the sketch that is given. So what could be the probable answers there? What could be the probable answers there? Let's read all of them. There's more interaction with people, there's more competition for resources, there's protection is easier, not enough space for everyone. So you can see from the option that is given that obviously there's more interaction with people. As you can see, the way it's nucleated, there's more interaction with people. That's one social advantage. There's more competition for resources, not really. Protection is easier. You can see protection is easier. There is a lot of people in one place. It's kind of nucleated, of course. So that the correct answer from the options that are given, okay, would be our 1 and 3, which is what? Which is D. That's how you came to to decide to say, okay, this is the correct answer. So you read first social advantage of settlement B. Look at settlement B. What are the social advantage? Consider the options that are given. You can see the one that are relevant to being a social advantage is this: there's more interaction with people, protection is easier, which means your answer is D. Then number 2, the economic advantage of settlement D. Okay, so what is important now is for you to know when you talk about the economy. Now we are talking in terms of income generation. How does it help in terms of generating income, in terms of deriving an income? So that's what should come to your mind when it comes to a question like this. We've talked about social. I think social advantage, I've talked about what you should focus on. Now economic advantage, obviously something to do with the generation of income. How does it help? So you look also at the options that are given. Okay, the first one is farming can be done on commercial scale. This is 3.1.2. Farming can be done on commercial scales. What is it? It is very isolated. Farms can be mechanized to increase production. Okay, then there is no social interaction. Obviously, we are looking at something that is an economic advantage. So firstly, obviously, when we are doing farming on a commercial scale, which means we are generating income, there's an income that is going to come out of farming. Remember what happens, okay, let's say taking advantage of a rural setup. Obviously, mostly they are into subsistence farming, where they grow crops or keep animals, rearing animals for themselves and their family, and nothing to sell. But now when it includes this part of commercial scale, it means now they are doing it for a profit, which means they are generating an income. So that's why I'm saying this is relevant. Item 1 in Roman numerals, it is very isolated. It has nothing to do with with being in economic advantage. So this one is out. Farms can be mechanized to increase production. So the moment you increase production, which means you are making more, you are maximizing, you are doing it intensively, so that at least you get or you generate more profits. So the answer there is 1 and 3. 1 and 3, which means our answer there is what? Is C. Let's move on to the next question. Then 3.1.3, it reads, 3.1.3, it reads, settlement A is A. We want in terms of shape. We also want what influenced that shape. Okay, so when it comes now to the shape of settlements, what is it that we should think of when it comes to the shape? Well, some of you confuse the pattern with the shape. So when it comes to the shape, is it round? Okay, obviously, when you talk about it being round, it means these settlements are influenced by people with a common factor of interest, e.g. a church, a water source, which means we can have a settlement. Assuming that this is a water source, then we have a settlement around this water source. That's what makes it round. Okay, we're talking about round. Okay, it can be linear, which means we are talking of a settlement that is following a road or a river. Okay, that forms a line. Okay, that's linear now. Then we can talk about a crossroads. We can talk about a T-shaped. Okay, let's go and look at what we have at A. So at A, what do we have? We can see that it is following a road. This is your key. Okay, it is following a road. That makes it linear in terms of shape. Okay, it is following a road. That makes it linear in terms of shape. Okay, so most of you confuse the shape and the pattern. When you talk about the pattern, we are talking about the density of the buildings, like how close are they. If they are very close to each other, which means they are dense. Okay, they are dense. Okay, they are dense, they are nucleated. Okay, if they are far apart, which means they are isolated or dispersed, that has something to do with the pattern. But when you talk about the shape, now we are looking at what shape is assumed because of the alignment of the buildings. Like here, they are along a line that makes it linear. Here is T-shaped. You can see it's T-shaped. Why? This is the shape that is assumed. Okay, no, okay, let's just go and decide on the answer now. So number one is, okay, you can see that it is what? Linear shape. Why? Because it is following the road. It is linear shape and it is influenced by the road. So which means your answer there is A. Okay, your answer there is A. Okay, then the physical factor influencing the site of the settlement is, okay, so the question now, it rests on the physical, okay, influencing the site. Okay, site where the settlement is located. Site, we are talking about where the settlement is located. Okay, we are talking about where the settlement is located. Remember, when you look at some of the factors that affect the site of a settlement, we look at things such as the availability of fresh water for domestic and agricultural use, and availability of building material, flatland for building, grassland, fertile soil, and so on. But now the question is asking, okay, from the options that are given, what do we have that is physical? The physical factor influencing the site of a settlement. So from the options that are given, transport routes is not physical, distance from the market is not physical, job opportunity is not physical, which means what is physical is what? Is our relief. You understand? Is our relief. That is what is physical. Can I just add something there? Okay, where are we likely to have more settlements? Obviously on flat land. Okay, we are not likely to have more of the settlements on a steeper land. We are likely to have on a flat land. That's where we are likely to have more settlements. So that is something to do with the relief. So that is your physical factor, which is A. Okay, rural settlements are predominantly associated with. So number one, take note. What type of settlements are we talking about? We are talking about the rural settlement. What are they predominantly associated with? Remember, when we're doing the classification of settlements, we used things such as size and complexity. We use as the things such as the functions. These are some of the things that we talked about, where we say that when we talk about rural settlement, they are unifunctional, which means there's one dominant economic activity within the rural area. There's one dominant economic activities within the rural areas, which is mostly extractive in nature. So when you talk about extractive, think of raw materials, think of the primary activities. But when you talk about the urban settlements, obviously, it's multifunctional. There is secondary, there's tertiary. Secondary activities, we are now looking at what we call the transformation of raw materials into semi-finished and finished products, which means the products that we have in the raw form are now being transformed. There is value addition when it comes to secondary activities. Now, there is value addition through manufacturing, through processing, construction. Those are examples of what falls within the secondary activities. When you talk about the tertiary now, it has something to do with service provision, like your transport, like your tourism, your banking system, and also that is something to do with tertiary activities. Then quaternary, these are specialized activities as your research and development, IT. These are some of the things that falls under quaternary. So rural settlement, now from the options that are given, it is predominantly associated with what? With the primary activities. Okay, primary activities, we are looking at your mining, we are looking at your agriculture, we are looking at your forestry, we are looking at your fishing. So these are some things that fall or that are dominant within the rural settlement, of which the rural settlements also, you need to have an idea, what does the rural settlement cover? We're looking about your farmsteads, we're talking about your hamlets, we're talking about your villages. This is what falls under rural settlement. So in those settlements, these primary activities are dominant. That's basically what we are talking about. Okay, all right. When we talk about urban settlements, obviously we are talking about your town, you're talking about your city, you're talking about your conurbations, we are talking about your your metropolis. Okay, you're talking about your conurbations, you're talking about your megapolis. Okay, this is what falls under urban now. Okay, let's move on to 3.2. 3.2, choose the term in column B that matches the illustration in column A. Write only the letter Y or Z next to the question numbers 3.2.1 to 3.2.5 in the answer book. So when it comes now to, I think, let me just try to add more flesh. Let me try to add more flesh, because sometimes we don't just delve into the concept before we understand what it's all about. Okay, so when it comes to the low order functions and low order goods and high order goods, I just want to give a brief background so that this falls under urban hierarchy. Of course, when you talk about urban hierarchy, we're talking about the ranking of urban areas according to the criteria of size, the number of functions, and the degree of specialization of the functions. The more people in functions a town at a city have, the higher is the hierarchy it will be. So the type of functions, low order functions, what is it that we are exactly talking about? I haven't started answering the question. I just want to give you a background. Okay, so here when we talk about low order function, we're talking about the goods and services required regularly by most of the population, our daily necessities, like our foodstuff that we buy from the shops, like your bread, like your milk. These are the things that we buy on a daily basis. This is what falls under low order function. When you talk about high order functions, we're talking about goods or services that are only required occasionally, or is usually high priced goods. Okay, we're talking about your cars, your microwaves, those things, your couches, those things that are expensive. So that's what defines. Okay, that's what divide high order functions. Okay, so when you also talk about, I think I need to add something here. When you also talk about low order and high order and low order centers, centers refers obviously to settlement. Low order center, we're talking about central places with a specialized threshold population, fewer services, and many low order services. And the high order center, central places with high threshold population, offering many services and mainly high order services. Okay, so let me try to show you what I have here. Okay, this is what I have here. Okay, the definition, I've got the definition here. I've got low order functions and services, high order functions and services. I'm just trying to do this so that at least we have an idea of what we talk about before we start exploring the concept. So this is the definition: functions. Okay, low order functions and services. What do we have? Definition: function or goods need to be you buy often. Okay, low order functions and services. High order functions, goods not needed regularly. Okay, which means we do not need these products regularly. Okay, functions or services, which means low order function services is less specialized. Then when you talk about high order functions, it's highly specialized. Threshold population, smaller number of people, larger number of people. The range, which means we are prepared to travel smaller distance to buy a low order function or services. We are prepared to buy. You can't move all the way from, let's say, from Soweto and going to the Johannesburg CBD just to buy a loaf of bread. You can't. You can just buy from the local shops. But if you are to buy something that is of high order, of course, you are prepared to travel long distance. This is something to do with them. The range. Okay, small sphere of influence, small, large, distance traveled. This is basically what we are talking about. That's what differentiates high and lower order. Okay, so also that I need to add something. Okay, when you talk about the sphere of influence, we are talking about the ability of an urban center to provide a variety of urban services to its surrounding or rural settlement, rural environments. That's what the sphere of influence is all about. When you talk about the threshold population, we are talking about the minimum number of people necessary before a particular good or services can be profitable. You find that obviously small centers, central places have got a small threshold, which means they need a small population for them to be profitable. Whereas large high order functions, obviously they've got a bigger threshold, which means they need a bigger market share in order for them to become profitable. That's basically what we are talking about. When you talk about the range, obviously we're talking about the maximum distance from which a good or service can draw its customers, which means you are prepared to travel long distance to buy a high order good, than you are prepared to drive to go shorter distance to buy a lower order goods. Of course, you just travel smaller distance, you buy a loaf of bread, those basic necessities. But if it's high order, obviously you are prepared to travel long distances. Okay, let's go through the questions now. Choose the term from column B that matches the illustration in column A, write only the letter Y to Z next to the question numbers in the answer book. Okay, so what do we have here? Obviously, we have bread. Bread is something that we buy on a daily basis. It's something that is basic. That's a low order goods. Obviously, what is the answer there? The answer there is low order goods, because this is something that is affordable, that we buy on a regular basis. It's a daily necessity. Okay, then from here you can see this is a plasma. Of course, this is more like a dishwasher. Okay, so from the two that we have, we are now saying now, are they high order or lower order goods? You can see, but these ones, they are not something that goods that we purchase on a daily basis. They are not necessity. So that makes them what? High order goods, plus also the fact that they are expensive as compared to bread. Okay. Then here, Rainbow Regional Shopping Center. Of course, this is something to do the service center. What does it provide in terms of its function? 3.2.3. 3.2.3 is a high order center. The type of goods that you are likely to purchase or to get from this, think of the malls. Obviously they are high order centers. Okay, then compare them to your spaza shop, local spaza shop that are within your township or area that you stay. 3.2.4, you have got Vodacom. Okay, obviously the type, of course, you can see that is a what? It's high order as well. 3.2.4 is high order. The cell phones and how much you buy them, okay, things like that. That's what makes them high order. It's not something that we require on a daily basis. Okay, of course we use phones, but we are not talking in terms of Vodacom providing phones and the other services that it provides. Then 2.5, houses for sale. Of course, we need houses. Of course, it's one of the basic needs. But however, when you look at houses now, it's a high order service. Of course, it's a high order service. Look at the price at which we buy these houses. So there you have got your high order service. So in order for you to master the high order and low order, of course, it's a basic need, it's a basic necessity. It's usually cheaper. Where we are having provisions of higher order service, of course, that's what makes those centers high order service. Okay, that's what you need to master in as far as these concepts are concerned. Let's move on to the next one. 3.3. Okay, the question reads 3.3. Let's go through the question. Okay, when you have information like this, guys, always make sure that you get as many points as possible. Why am I saying that? Because it's easier. You have got answers. You have got everything at your disposal. Refer to the infographic on rural-urban migration. So the concept that is assessed here is rural-urban migration, to answer the questions that follow. So once you know what is rural-urban migration, obviously it's where we have got people movement of people from the rural to the urban areas. So before you even attempt to answer the question, you have to know, you have to have an idea in as far as the concept is concerned. So what causes people to move from them? To move from rural to urban areas? What comes to your mind? Obviously, is your push factors. Okay, what causes people? Of course, in the raw setup, what do we have? It's more dominant with primary activities. I'll take agriculture as an example, which means there's more farming that is taking place. What happens if the soil becomes infertile? It means people are forced to migrate because they can no longer generate an income. What happens if there is drought? They are relying more on farming, which means there is lack or shortage of rainfall. Obviously, they won't be able to farm. They are bound to move. Do we have enough job opportunities within the rural? No, we haven't got much. So this also acts as a push factor. It forces people to move away from the rural areas and go and live within the urban area. So you should have that mindset to say, okay, explore the concept, think about anything that is related to the concept. The main concept here, like I've said, is the rural to urban migration. Then you also think, what attracts people to the urban area? What are people migrating to urban areas? Obviously, there are certain opportunities or things that are better off as compared to the rural. You're looking at the job opportunities. I use just better services as an umbrella term, because services is actually broad. Education, your health, there's a lot of that falls under service. That's why I'm saying it's an umbrella term. So that's what I'm thinking now. Before I even start to analyze the infographics that is at my disposal. So what do I have now? You can see what we have. This is more like an informal settlement, which means obviously when people migrate to the urban areas, can they afford accommodation? If they cannot afford accommodation, what do? They end up building houses, those cheap houses, whenever there is vacant land. Why? Because they cannot afford rent in the former houses. So obviously I have already I've already noted that this is one of the challenges in as far as rural to urban migration is concerned. Obviously within the urban areas, because now people cannot afford accommodation, there are high rates of unemployment. How do they react to such a societal situation? Obviously they are bound to build where there is vacant land, which is informal, which are houses that are not known by the municipality. They are illegal. Okay, that's one thing. Then number two, if you look at this graph, what do we have? The population in millions. We have got a comparison of urban and rural. Okay, the population in millions. Then you have got a comparison of urban and rural. This is the time period that you have from 1950. You have from 1950 to 2015. Okay, which means what is happening here is they are now doing a comparison. They want to check if there was an increase in relation to the trend of the number of people living in urban areas from 1950 to 2015. So this is also going to give you or to help you to answer the question. From here, I'm going to get answers for my question. From here, I'm going to get the answers for my question. Let me now read the source that I have. Unfortunately, all right, it reads, unfortunately, city life has its own challenges. Okay, already it starts by acknowledging that there are a lot of challenges in as far as the city life is concerned. As new migrants continue to arrive, which adds to the number of the unemployment. There's already a problem of unemployment within the urban area, but the arrival of people from the rural to the urban, which means it's actually exacerbating the problem of unemployment. That's basically what we're talking about. This inevitably, which means unavoidably, okay, results in further urban poverty. We already have poverty in urban area, but if more people are coming and those people are not going to be employed because there's lack of unemployment, lack of jobs, it means that the poverty levels in the urban areas continue to increase. As a result, unemployment labor force resorts to informal economic activities to ensure their survival. So what do? They look for anything that is income generating so that they can take themselves out of that poverty situation. Okay, the unskilled and uneducated immigrants, okay, often do not find jobs and find jobs with, or if they do, they find jobs with low incomes, which means if they find jobs, okay, they do not get those jobs that are remunerated well, okay, they have got low salaries or low wages. With low income, it is difficult to rent accommodation in the urban areas. This then results in the mushrooming of slums in the periphery of them urban areas. Okay, what we are simply saying is that in the end of the outskirts of the urban areas, that's what we are referring to as the periphery. Okay, the crime rate and the other social evil and such as drug dealing are also rising in the urban areas. So what is being highlighted from this infographic is we have been shown that we end up having informal settlements. Okay, number one, there's an analysis of the trend that is taking place in as far as in rural to urban migration is concerned. That's number two. Number three, we are also lack to having access to some of the challenges that are taking place as a result of the rural to urban migration. So this in itself should help you to answer or to understand or to unpack the concept that you're going to be assessed on. So you should always make sure that you go through this. Do not leave anything. Just go through the information that you are given. Try to analyze, try to link it to the concept of rural urban migration. Like I've said, guys, you have been taught about settlement, you have been taught about rural urban migration, you know what it is. But here is now about application of the concept. That's what we do at FET level. You apply the concept. It's not only about it's not about only about reciting, but you have to apply it, you have to analyze, you have to have that independent analysis, you have to have that analytical mind to analyze, okay, to interrogate the concept so that at least you make it as understandable as possible. Okay, the first thing that we do for 2 marks, guys, you can't afford to lose 2 marks. Define, which means what is needed here. This is the key term. You need to write the definition. What is rural to urban migration? That's what the question is asking you. What is rural to urban migration? Can we just go through that? It is the movement of people from the rural to the urban areas. That's what it's all about. The movement of people from the rural to the urban areas. It's a concept. You have to make sure that you get it right. You have to make sure that you get it right. So it is the movement of people from the rural to the urban areas. That's what rural to urban migration is all about. Okay. So already now that you know, you've gone through this, you know that the question that you're going to be asked, they are related to the concept. That's the concept that is being assessed. Okay. With reference to the infographic, identify the trend in the number of people living in the urban areas from 1950 to 2020. So you are given here the point of reference. Use the infographic. Identify, okay, you identify from, okay, obviously you're going to use information from here, okay, that's why you're going to identify, was there an increase or a decrease? The trend is just a change in the number of people living in the urban areas from 1950 to 2020. So this is where it starts, 1950 to 2020. You can see, if you can check here, it's increasing from 1950, it's going upwards. This is your urban. So make sure that you do not use this line that shows the rural. You have to make sure that you check which one shows urban, which one shows rural. You can see that there's been an increase. So it means your answer there is increasing. You get your mark. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Account for the trend identified in 3.3.2, which means when you are accounting for now, you are giving the reason. What could be the reason behind in the increase in the people living in urban areas? What could be the reason behind that? Okay, in the change, account for the trend identified. We have said that here there has been an increase from 1950 to 2020. You can see that it's visible. It's something that you can see from your graph. Okay, let's see now. Account. What are some of the reasons? Account for the trend identified in 3.3.2. What could be the possible reason as to why we have got more people moving from rural to the urban areas? It's because, of course, I'm going to look at two perspectives. I'm going to comment or to give my answer from the point of rural areas, and I'm also going to give my answer from the point of urban areas. From the rural areas, people move from rural area to urban areas because of, number one, in rural areas, there are no jobs available. So as a result, that's why we have an increasing number of people living in the urban areas. Okay, in rural areas, of course, there are poor services. Obviously, there are poor services in terms of education, in terms of service delivery in general. So it means people end up migrating to the urban areas. You can talk about poor education, you can talk about poverty, you can talk about poor medical facilities, poor housing, among other reasons. That is within the rural areas. So this is what has resulted in the trend of us having more people within the urban area. This is what I'm giving the reason behind the changes identified on this graph, where there is an increase in the number of people staying in the urban areas. So I can also look at it from the perspective of urban areas, where I can look at things like there are better or more job opportunities within the urban areas. That's why people are moving to the urban areas. There are better services in terms of education, in terms of health services, better education, better medical facilities, better housing, better social life. So these are some of the things that you can actually put across in order to give the reason as to why there's been an increasing in the number of people that are staying within the urban area. Then the other thing also that court evidence, court evidence from the extract that suggests that the movement of people into the urban areas is an economic disadvantage. Okay, economic disadvantage. What could be the economic disadvantage? Okay, this is the extract I'm going to read again. Unfortunately, city life has its own challenges as new migrants continue to arrive as to the number of people of the unemployed. Okay, this inevitably results in further urban poverty. As a result, the unemployed labor force resorts to informal economic activities to ensure its survival. The unskilled and uneducated new migrants often do not find jobs or find jobs with low incomes. With low income, it is difficult to rent formal urban accommodation. This then results in the mushrooming of slums on the periphery of the urban areas. The crime rate results in the mushrooming of slums in the periphery in urban areas. The crime rate and social ills such as drug dealing are also in the rise in urban areas. So now, court evidence from the extract above suggests that the movement of people into the urban areas is an economic disadvantage. 3.3.4. We are saying now there is lack of employment or there is unemployment. That's an economic disadvantage. There is lack of employment or unemployment. Okay. There's lack of employment or unemployment. Okay, which means now which adds to the number of unemployed, which means there's unemployment. That's an economic disadvantage. Okay. Then 3.3.5. According to the infographic. Okay. Identify one social injustice urban areas in the urban areas that arise in the increase of the urban population. 3.3.5. Of course, we were talking about some of the social injustice. Of course, there's something that has to do with the drug dealing here. That's a social injustice. Something to do with crime. The crime rate, what do? They increase. This is something that is also a social injustice. Okay, we are talking about the formation of slums, of course, number one. Crime rate increases, drug dealing, the social evil. So any one from those qualify to be an answer for 3.3.5. Then 3.3.6, it reads, suggest three measures that can be implemented 3 measures that can be implemented in rural areas to reduce the number of people living. Of course, we are having a situation whereby we are losing a lot of people from the rural areas, which is rural depopulation. Obviously, the decrease in the number of people that are staying in the rural areas due to urban migration. So this question is asking you now to address the challenge. This is the challenge that we have. I am always emphasizing when I'm doing these videos that whenever it comes to a geographical question, you define the concept. What are the problems that arise as a result of the concept that you have explored? Okay, what are the strategies? We do not only identify these problems in society, but we also supposed to come up with solutions. And solutions that we come up with, they're supposed also to be sustainable. Okay, so that's what we advocate for. So suggest 3 measures that can be implemented in rural areas to reduce the number of people living. We want to retain these people that are migrating to urban areas. In that way as well, we help to make sure that the rural areas also develop, because we cannot only develop the urban areas at the expense of the rural. We don't want them to lag behind. We want them to develop the same way the urban areas are developing. So this is why we are trying to suggest solutions to make sure that the people do not leave the rural areas, that we do not reduce the number of people that are living in the rural areas. So what could be some of the answers that are relevant to that question? So number 1, we create employment opportunity in rural areas. Obviously, we are saying that there is more primary activities within the rural areas. Let's talk about agriculture. So we are saying now we can commercialize agriculture, which means the moment we commercialize it, mostly is subsistence. So which means if they are moving on now to intensive agriculture, which is more commercialized, which means they are able to make income from that. This helps them in creating job opportunity. So the reason that forces people to leave the rural areas, which is because of lack of job opportunities, it should now be corrected or solved. So that is in a way will help us to reduce the number of people that are living in the rural areas. We can provide basic infrastructure, because basic infrastructure, what it does is it's also conducive for investments. The moment we have got roads, the moment we have got telecommunication that is more effective, the moment we make this road to be accessible, which means the people that are within the industry can go and invest within the rural areas. Why? Because we have provided the basic infrastructure in terms of roads, in terms of health facilities, among other things. Okay, government can also offer incentives for industries to be located in the rural areas through they can subsidize. They can also exempt them from tax, that if you are going to operate within the rural areas, we are exempt you from tax, we are not going to pay tax, which means for the industry to operate, they have a profit motive. The moment they have got an initiative that cut down their expenditure or expenses, it is viable for them. So it can also be used or utilized by the government to offer incentive for industries to be located in the rural areas, which means in that way there's a creation of employment within the rural areas. We can also talk about providing basic services, your hospitals, better education. I think that in itself will retain people within the rural areas. That's reducing the number of people living in the rural areas. We can improve productivity in rural areas through land reform. That's what we can do, because the moment people have got access to land, they are able to farm, they are able to improve their food security, then they generate income, they stay within the rural area. So those are some of the things that you can actually talk about in as far as the measures that can be implemented in rural areas to reduce the number of people living. So the concept of rural to urban migration in general, or rural settlement issues is very important, guys. Always know, if you're not going to be assessed on rural to urban migration, they are going to ask about social justice, social injustice, and where you're going to explore land reform. So you should always make sure that you master those topics. Let's move on. Refer to the urban problem depicted in the photo. Okay, as you can see that there's a lot of traffic in this road. There's a lot of traffic in this road. So what comes to your mind is obviously this is something to do with traffic congestion. Then as you are also watching, you can think about the rear via buses. Obviously, this is also coming as an alternative to ease congestion, because instead of people driving their own private cars, what if they just use buses? Do you think we are going to have a lot of cars in the roads? No. So which means this one also, a later stage, you're going to be asked as reason as to why this can be an alternative to ease the problem that is depicted on this picture. So this is traffic congestion, obviously in the urban areas. Okay, this is traffic congestion, as you can see. So let me not waste time. Identify the urban problem depicted in the picture 3.5. So you identifying the urban problem, which means you are analyzing the picture. You are analyzing the picture. Then you come up with the postulation or the suggestion that this is the problem. 3.4.1, obviously, that is traffic congestion. You can see there's a lot of traffic that is on the road. Okay, with the reference to the photo above, here, okay, list one cause of urban problem mentioned in 3.4.1. 3.4.1. Obviously, again, there are too many cars. These are things that you can see, guys. These are things that you can see. You can't tell me that you can lose marks. Okay, too many cars, inadequate public transport. Obviously, we can only have this line for the buses, which means they're inadequate. If they're adequate, which means it was not going to be this problem. Okay, not enough traffic lanes. Too many people choose to drive their own cars. Obviously, that's why I was saying that if all these people decide not to drive their own cars and use buses, obviously we're not going to have this problem of traffic congestion. So too many cars, that is with reference to the photo above, list one cause of urban problem mentioned, traffic congestion. Too many cars, obviously, inadequate public transport, not enough traffic lanes, too many people choose to drive their own cars. These are some of the problems that results in what we call traffic congestion. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Evident in the photo above is a sustainable solution to this urban problem. There is something that you can see, something that is evident, something that is visible from the picture that can be used, okay? That can be used as a solution to this urban problem. Of course, what could it be? Of course, better public transport. You can see these buses. This can be a solution. If people do stop driving their own cars and start to use the public transport, obviously we are going to solve the problem of traffic congestion. So guys, the answer is there. The answer is there. You don't have to struggle. You get your 2 marks. Already from this, you have got 5 out of 15. You see how we are moving. Okay, so better transport, better public transport, the bus lanes are evident in the photo. Rear via, that's an example. Of course, that's how you answer this question. Then suggest one possible reason why this the solution mentioned in question 3.4.3 is still not helped in solve this specific urban problem. Of course, we are saying that we have got solution to this problem of traffic congestion, but why is it that it remains to be imminent? We are still having the problem of traffic congestion on a daily basis without us knowing that we should have better public transport. What could be the problem? The reason behind why that solution is not working? We are looking at the public transport, sometimes it's unreliable. So it means people prefer using their private cars because they are saying public transport is not reliable. Okay, insufficient public transport is not enough to cater for all the people, you understand? So that in itself becomes a problem as well. Public transport is affected by trucks. People cannot get to work sometimes. Of course, that could be a problem as well. Public transport does not cover all areas from home to work. People prefer using their own cars. It's safer to some people, hence they cannot resort to public transport. Too many people rely on public transport. As a result, there's a lot of pressure that is in as far as the public transport is concerned. Okay, lack of upgrading on current transport infrastructure and lack of road maintenance. So these are some of the reasons that you can actually cite. You see now we have got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 15 already. Then let's move on to the paragraph question. In paragraph approximately 8 lines, discuss how this urban problem negatively impacts commuters. Okay, commuters, these are the people that are being carried by this transport. Okay, they discuss how this problem, urban problem, the problem that we are referring to that is being assessed is traffic congestion. So we are now discussing how this problem negatively, take note, problem negatively impacts on the commuters. What could be some of the answers? It causes stress, frustration, anxiety due to long periods of time spent in traffic. Remember, it causes stress, frustration, anxiety due to long periods of time spent in traffic. Okay? Loss of jobs. Commuters arrive at work late. Remember, sometimes we say that they are not reliable. Sometimes they can be strike. So you end up losing your jobs. Okay? Loss of jobs. Commuters arrive at work late. Road rage can escalate as commuters become impatient. The increase in the number of accidents, commuters drive recklessly. Costs are high for commuters. Stop and go traffic uses more fuel. Impact on health, commuters due to high pollution levels and stress. It's time consuming. People get late to meetings. Jobs can lose income due to hourly rates or lose income. Learners arriving late at school is losing teaching time. Stop and go traffic expose commuters to smash and grab crime. So these are some of the things that you can actually highlight in as far as this concept is concerned. So this takes us to the end of settlement geography on the Gauteng June examination grade 12. Guys, it's not about what I can say is the more you do some of these questions, the more you prepare yourself for the examination. So do as many question papers as possible. I'm only going to do a few, but you can also try the one from KZN, the other one from Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape. Try to do as many questions as possible. But here is just to try and unpack some of these concepts so that they become easier to understand.